Hello and welcome to the Warhammer Podcast, episode 117. I'm your host, Brad. This is my co-host, Eric.
How's it going?
And if you can't tell from my amazing voice, I've had a wonderful week. I caught a mysterious illness I can't mention, so it's very rough to talk right now, and I don't think I'm very pleasing to listen to. So, Eric is going to tell us all about orcs today.
Yeah, it's the open beta weekend for the 40k Speed Freaks video game, so what better time to get excited about the Ork Codex?
So, before we get into our topic proper, we actually have some news for the week.
This must be important.
It is important.
Oh, sounds good.
Alright, so, first things first, we actually have news worthy of celebration. The Warhammer objective markers are back, baby!
It took a little while, but it's finally fixed and figured out.
We're recording this a little bit late in the week, so thank Borrelio, but we wanted to make sure that the news was solidified before we put it on air, and Bricky has gotten back to us. The correct size objective markers are now in. These are the most objectively correct objective marker-sized objective markers to ever exist.
So hopefully we can get Bricky on at some point to kind of explain, but like GW's insistence on with their unit of measurement as much as possible is really difficult to deal with on a manufacturing end, but these objective markers are very close to perfect.
So normally objective markers are of one of two sizes. One is slightly too small, one is slightly too large. There's no objective marker made that is the exact advertised size that you are supposed to have. This is because GW mixes imperial and metric in their measurements and ends up with a nightmare number that no piece of manufacturing cuts. This is the closest you will ever see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty happy about it, at least what we've seen so far. We have pictures with a tape measure and everything.
Measured to the exact millimeter.
It looks good.
They're going to be advertised as 7.5-inch objective markers, which is technically the classification they would fall in, but they're actually much closer to GW's slightly off number of 3 inches plus 20 millimeters radius.
It should have like the exact specifics on the store website with a disclaimer or whatever of like, hey, it's not actually perfect to the submicron.
But it will be closer than the 7.5 inches that we actually advertise it as.
Yeah.
But all of that is to saying Bricky made up in spades for his screw up, and now better objective markers than ever will exist. By the time this episode airs, you should have an email saying they're shipping, but that is the word I've got from the Brickman himself. And importantly, with how these are made, we are now able to do low run fun objective markers, like a special version, should we so choose in the future.
Yeah.
We're no longer tied to like the big order from China that has to be like 10,000 of them at once.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much Berkey's kind of shared on the back end thing, but we do have more customization options that we can do, which is honestly really nice. Now we can do the dumb ideas.
All right, while the objective markers were great, we've got a little bit of bad news, but I don't want to gum up the beginning of the episode with it, so we'll talk about that at the end. For now, just know that on this episode, we're going to be good boys, to be on theme, pun intended, and we're going to be Gork and Mork fearing boys today because of some stuff YouTube did to us last week. But for now, it would help us a lot if you would check that you're subscribed, make sure you do the YouTube pleasantries this week, and we'll explain things more at the end.
Alright, but instead of that depressing stuff, let's have some real fun with orcs beforehand.
Sounds good. Now let's talk about orcs to feel better.
Alright, I think that is a perfect topic to get some good vibes by, because this Ork Codex is very fun. I have had some really good feelings about it. It was like, you know, when it was initially released, I was like, this is cool, but like, it's kind of lived up to all my expectations, and I'm pretty happy about it.
Alright, Eric, so instead of just ranting about how good the Codex is, let's frame this a different way. I know in 9th edition there was a bunch of clans for orcs, the different ways that orcs could play based on which of their flavored sub-factions they liked. Can we get a rundown of like who equates to what in the new Codex?
Yeah, because 10th has kind of moved away from that style that 9th had.
Which I do agree with. I don't like the idea of people yelling at you because your iron hands are blue.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, so I just kind of like go through it. Death Skulls being the like junkyard kind of style. We do have a pretty nice option there, and that would be the Dread Mob. They aren't quite the same. Dread Mob has more focused flavor on what it's actually doing.
Yeah, Death Skulls was more like the lucky gits who would also like pull apart vehicles while like they were like the aggressive mechanics who would discombobulate things to soup up their own tech.
Yeah, it was very much the full junkyard of things broken over there. I'm going to take part of that and part of this and put it on mine, and now it's going to go faster. Dread Mob still has a lot of the feeling of junkyard because it's focused on mechs and walkers, but it doesn't have quite the same feel.
It's not universally all tech.
Yeah. But I think most people that enjoy the junkyard aesthetic are going to have fun with Dread Mob. Then we've got Snake Bites, and this is the Squig Boys.
This is more my portion of the army for like what I really jive with, which is the base level being an orc, more naturalist type.
Embrace the wild side. And
yeah, so Snake Bites are obviously the big hunt. It's not really a surprise.
It's kind of on point, and it does a really good job of, if you liked Snake Bites, the big hunt's probably gonna work pretty well for you. Evil Sons is Speed Freaks, and we have a Kult of Speed. We'll get to it a bit further. I don't know if I can completely sell you if like you liked Evil Sons, you'll like Kult of Speed, just because I think it's a little weaker.
It's exactly what you want though. It's an advanced based, like it wants you to play Speed Freak models, which is all you wanted to play as an Evil Sons player anyway.
Those are why you were there. Yeah, you're playing the ridiculous Rucka truck squig buggies and
things with the greatest names in the codex.
Yeah.
But also just being able to play war trikes with war bikes. Just playing your fast motorized boys. And it's a shootier look at it, but I like it.
Yeah, it is kind of neat to have the shooty version of some of those things. But because like Bad Moons was the more shooty orcs before.
And they're kind of not here.
And Cult of Speed is kind of the only thing you have that's like shooty focused, but it's definitely more focused on speed freaks, which it's kind of weird.
Yeah, so those two kind of mixed. I still think it's a better Evil Sons detachment than a Bad Moons detachment, but I don't think it's a bad Bad Moons detachment either.
No, it's a nice option to have, which is good, but I think that some Bad Moons players are going to be a bit disappointed.
Yeah, shooter boys are not going to be a thing.
No, Goths just have the elite orc.
So Goths were already kind of the Index detachment, right? With the, what is called the War Horde now?
Yeah. It's the like basic, you know, have a leader, war boss with your boys and go break their heads open kind of thing.
But we kind of got like a Gothier detachment.
Yeah, man. We got the Bully Boys, and these are all about the war bosses, man. It is really cool. I mean, it's also just like super strong, so like that helps. But it's nice to show off like, all right, we're gonna have the war bosses really lead this orc army, and it's going to be elite units of orcs going around breaking heads. So I think Goths could definitely work with Warhorde being the Index detachment, totally fine. But I think Bully Boys is kind of what Goths wanted to play before a lot of times.
Yeah, being the biggest, baddest orc.
Exactly. And then we had Blood Axes, and as much as Bad Moons was kind of done dirty, Blood Axes just doesn't exist. Your sneaky gets.
It is a weird hole. It really only affects commandos and sort of storm boys.
It's not that bad of a thing to miss because there aren't that many sneaky orc units and orc models.
It is weird to have a new redone named character and no detachment that really is for him.
Yes, it is a bit weird. It's probably okay because those units, commandos aren't particularly amazing, but they're still fine, and Boss Snickrat still does some shenanigans. The units themselves are still good in a bunch of these other detachments, so like it's not too bad, but like you're not gonna have a fully sneaky focused army detachment, all that stuff. That said, we did get actual legit full support for the Green Tide.
Yeah, which I assume we lost one of the others to fit this in here.
And it's always nice to have the option and like it be kind of the correct option to choose like green tide of just like have as many boys as you can get and just clog up the enemy and just overwhelm them, man. It's so orc like, which is kind of possible before, but like it just wasn't the same. Now it feels like the orc horde is just going to overwhelm you, and that's awesome. Then I guess Freebooters would be the last one, and Freebooters is weird.
Freebooters is a hard one because obviously people love it just because like pirate orcs.
Yeah, it's great.
But like Freebooters, when you look at it, is basically just orcs who have been kicked out of their clan and are just like souped together, which the Index can kind of handle.
I would say like if you were gonna play Freebooters, the Index, the Warhorde detachment is probably what you're gonna use. I mean, you might use like whatever else just because you have a few more mechs or something like that and you just whatever, but it would have been neat if they had another detachment that did something like really unique with Freebooters. I think that there's something there, but that's fine. You can still play your pirate orcs. It's gonna still work out just fine.
All right, going from another angle, let's talk about the detachments we ended up with. We can skip over the Index because we've been playing with it for a year now.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is like it does the solid job of being the default. You know, like if you just have a well-rounded list, Warhorde is going to do you well. It kind of does the get in melee, do better. It's got decent strats and all that stuff. So like if you're not sure what detachment to take, Warhorde's a good option. You probably won't be disappointed.
Which is a sign that's a good Index detachment too.
Yeah, it is nice to have a default option, especially if the other more focused ones actually do their focused jobs and it isn't like, oh, you were a monster detachment that nobody playing monsters cares about because I'd rather just have the default Index one. It's not quite that. Warhorde is good. It's a nice default, but all of the other ones have reason to play them.
And of those, I think the surprise hit of the Codex for you and I was Dread Mob.
I'm not sure if it's really a surprise.
I think what is to me a surprise hit, and to you just a normal hit, is Dread Mob. I think it does the fun of a mech vehicle, whatever monster, a big detachment.
Right, like play the big thing.
It does that so well compared to the other codices that have come before it. Compare this to the boring Tyranid one, right?
Oh my god, this is entirely different leagues. It's so wild.
And I really like that it also plays into the like gambling aspect, which you could flavor Try Dat Button as both something for Death Skulls and something for Freebooters. The fun gamble aspect is 100% why this works for me. And it's not just a boring check it off the list detachment.
Yeah, I think I would have enjoyed it even if it didn't have all the gamble parts, just because like actually being able to play Orc Walkers without like it being basically just a downside is really cool. But man, the whole gamble effect and like the way they've worked Hazardous into it, like, and the stacking Hazardous and all of that, it really is a well designed and fun detachment.
Yeah, I do love the like push your luck mechanic of Hazardous too, of like just pick what you want and then just get lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I mean, that follows through not just in the detachment rule, Try That Button, but a bunch of the strats also have push it, which is like, hey, if you really need to go further, all right, but have Hazardous. So it's like this whole like, how far are you going to go? You know, like at a certain point, you're going to blow yourself up. Like, you're not going to win that gamble. It's such a fun extra bit that like feels orc-like, and also makes those mechs and orc walkers a bit more play than just, oh yeah, I've got, you know, a Gorkanaut. It's cool. And now you're like, oh, I've got a Gorkanaut and I'm also doing these like rolls on stuff and like, how much am I going to push it kind of thing? And like, what am I going to do with mechs around them? It just really does feel pretty nice. I'm not entirely sure why they've got the grot extra bit, but hey, if you want to do the grot boss, grot spam, there is a extra little bit that says Gretchen from your army gain battle line keyword, and there's a strat for grots. So like,
and grot vehicles means you get to use the mech guns and get the main mechanic of the detachment too.
Yeah.
So you can play a really grot heavy list and have it like not be a total embarrassment.
Oh, absolutely. It would be really fun to go all in on that and like actually go heavy on your mech guns, because the bubble chukka also has the randomness, and like really embrace the fact fact that you're going to be rolling a bunch of dice. And like, you don't really know what's going to happen, but probably the enemy's going to die. Maybe you'll die as well. We'll see what happens, but it's going to be a good time either way. Yeah, just kind of like looking at the rest of it. The enhancements are honestly just fine. Like, I like Press It Fasta. It's kind of neat. Probably a bit too many points.
One thing I like is that the enhancements work well to make the mech be a glue piece for things that wouldn't normally be part of the detachment. This is like how Cryptex is handled in the one Necron Canoptic detachment. Whether or not it was on purpose there is a whole different matter.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see this crop up more on the newer codices. I do really hope that this is something they push for, to have a more narrow detachment be able to expand further through abusing how the keyword system with leaders works.
Right. And that is one of the things of like, leaders does open up a lot, and I feel like at least in the indexes it wasn't as used as it could be. Like, there was a lot of design space still open, and we're starting to see that, which is quite nice. The stratagems just kind of do what you want, more or less. It's very heavy on mechs, orc walkers, and grot vehicles. That's what you're doing. But I think I enjoy the fact that it has the whole push it hazardous thing on top of it. Like, none of these strats are so like, oh my god, that's amazing. They're all just solid. They do the job that they need to do. You're going to be able to use many of them. The conniving runts Gretchen one is kind of a throwaway, other than if you're trying to do a grot army. It's fun. But yeah, I just kind of generally like them, but they're not like over-tuned kind of thing, which means that like, yeah, you're gonna be taking a bunch of like big mechs and mechs. I like the big mech with shock attack gun, but you know, whatever. And like, you're gonna have some Killicans, mech guns. I feel like you kind of have to play a Gorkanaut if you're gonna be in the mech walker for the Dread Mob, just because like, it's so cool, right?
Why not just go for the full Stompa, Eric?
I mean, you're not wrong, but
the Morkanaut is an actual good unit, yeah.
The Morkanaut and Gorkanaut actually have options, and like, honestly, I think the Gorkanaut's solid. Like, I think it's pretty good at the point cost and what you're getting, especially in this detachment.
Yeah, like, the Stompa's funny, but the Gorkanaut and Morkanaut are actually like debatable units, and the Gorkanaut is just sort of a knight.
Yeah, it kind of is. For the price point that it is, like...
Yeah, it's a bit worse, but it's also a lot cheaper.
And then, like, because this detachment is so focused on, you know, your mechs and your walkers and the grot vehicles and stuff like that, you're going to be mostly focused on that. But, like, I think it's still great to add a bunch of, like, Ludas with the rest of it just to get some actual shooting going on. And, you know, Mega Knobs are just solid. And, yeah, you're going to have grots and boys. And, like, you're going to focus on mechs and walkers and grot vehicles and that stuff. But I think there's still a solid, like, 800 points that you can just kind of play around with and have the rest of your army do whatever you want, which is quite nice. Do you want to... I know that your voice is kind of limiting you on this one, but I want to give you the option to talk about the Big Hunt, because...
I'll do it for my Beastie Boys. I can do it. So, the Big Hunt is a pretty easy sell for me. Do you like squigs? You've come to the right place. I don't think that the Big Hunt is the best detachment. It is flavorful and good enough to want to play it over the generalist alternative that I think is still very good for it, like just playing the index.
Yeah, honestly, most the Big Hunt lists will work just fine with Warhorde, but the Big Hunt's got a lot more flavor to it.
Yeah, so you get a fun prey mechanic.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think it's really neat for like the whole like lore idea that like the Beastie Boys are trying to find the other big thing and prove that they're better, right?
Yeah, and just things like proper killy being in this, when we get to the enhancements, you can just try to make everything about being the biggest threat per character or per model possible, while still being very Beast Boss, Beastie Boy, squig themed.
Yeah.
Yes, we're saying Beastie Boy because we're mad at YouTube right now.
Basically, yeah. I keep like wanting to say it, and then I'm like...
Not the week after what just happened to us.
Not the week after. You can have some Beastie Boys music. No, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Would immediately get flagged. But yeah, the detachment rule and enhancements are definitely doing the like be the biggest thing and then prove it.
Yes, running your elite unit against their best unit and proving you are better is the perfect way to put it. You could just go generalist, but this is what playing beast bosses and playing squigs is all about, is like trying to get your squig hog boys to take down the knight, trying to use kill rigs to take down the big bads, trying to like prove Mozrog is the biggest baddest boy. Technically I'd probably just take a beast boss and Squigosaur for a lot of it, but whatever.
I think Mozrog is so cool. Like, out of all the models, I know you are like, squigs are great and all that stuff, but like, Mozrog is alright, he is cool. He's really cool.
But yeah, my way to play this is to go full in, just play pure squigs, pure beastie boys. You might throw in some Gretchens to hold a back point, because they're pretty universal as just to throw, one unit in there, hold a back point, call it good.
Yeah.
I know when we were looking at test lists for this, you always threw some Storm Boys in just to get something mobile up front. It's a fair way to do it, but I just want to play kill rigs and hunter rigs filled with dudes, and then just a ton of squig hog boys and beast bosses on Squigosaurs. And Mozrog, because why not?
Yeah, and if you want to play that kind of list, the big hunts, it's doing exactly what you want to do. It definitely isn't the most powerful kind of thing. Like, that same kind of list could still run in the War Horde and be fine.
I like that fact, though. The fact that you can run it in multiple detachments to get different feeling games with the same list is a positive.
Okay. I do wonder if, like, the fact that the primary ability is dependent on your opponent's list, like how many, like they're going to have a warlord, sure, we're going to kill that. Then they're going to probably have at least a vehicle or monster and we'll kill that. And if they're an infantry horde list, now what? Like you're still going to smash them, great, but like you don't have your whole prey thing going on.
It's exactly why I said that this is a fun but not the strongest detachment. If this had a nice fallback of you could choose any prey if none of the following exist, then this would be a lot easier to talk up. I have trouble from a competitive standpoint being like, here's why you want to run this over clearly stronger rules, which we'll be getting to.
Yeah.
But for me, this is a fun one. I don't think it hits Dread Mob level of awesomeness from a like pure rule standpoint of like how much fun you're having.
Probably not.
But it is still flavorful. It still works.
There's a lot of mobility going on. Like, I'm a big fan of the Glory Hog, the Scout 9 on your super mobile units just running around. Like, I'm liking it. I could see that being pretty fun, but it's a lot of mobility fun, less the Dread Mobs rolling dice, see what happens fun.
Yeah, I think this is a detachment you're taking to take enhancements on war bosses on squigs, putting them with squig hog boys and playing just elite killy units.
Definitely.
I don't think it's a big brain detachment.
Don't make it more complicated.
Exactly. It's the simple, does its job, and you can stop playing it and play your generalist detachment when you want.
All right, let's move on to Green Tide, the truest orc detachment. We talked about the big hunt. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink the Green Tide. Play as many boys as you can. It knows that you want to play boys. Do it.
It's a self-building detachment.
Yeah. And like, it does a great job of it. Like mob mentality is like, hey, you get 5-up influence on your boys, and like you get more bonuses if you have 10 or more models in the unit. So like, play as many as you can. And that's basically what's going on, and everything is basically trying to make your boys more kill, do better, melee harder, and like the enhancements are all move a bit faster, do more damage. There's one that is a CP generator, which is always nice to have as an option. I'm not sure how necessary it is in this detachment because the stratagems are good. There's no real fault that can be done with them. They have solid options in the fighting. They've got actually kind of interesting healing where you can actually return destroyed models. They're all very useful, but I don't know that like you need a CP generator. It's probably fine because it's not that many points. It's nice to have options.
Yeah, and combined with the Gretchen, it means you have very reliable extra CP.
Or at least, as reliable as Orcs is ever going to get.
It's more reliable than most factions get access to be honest. But it does mean you can spend freely, and if something looks fun, you can just pay the CP.
Yes. I did like the bragging rights having a nice call out of like, hey, you've got all your boys, but like, eventually they die. If you have 2 units that are, a bit smaller, just have them close together and they'll act like one for this turn, essentially. That's bigger. It's nice when you're having callouts for 10 or more models giving bonuses that you can have a way to do that in turn 4 when you're trying to scrape the barrel. There isn't that much to this.
No, so we have our little example lists that we're not covering in this episode because it would take a year, but we're just using these as ones to like show on YouTube so that you can look at what a typical list of this would look like. And I think it's pretty safe to say with Green Tide, you're starting off with 100 boys and then you debate if you're going to 120. And I assume 9 out of 10 people who are playing the Green Tide just started 120 boys and then build the rest of the list after.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're playing the Green Tide, you're playing as many boys as you have access to models. Maybe it's only 100 because you haven't finished, right? But like your goal is let's play as many as possible and then work from there. And like one of the great things about boys is you can have the leaders so long as you're big, you get both of them, which does make a group of 20 boys with a pain boy and a war boss pretty scary.
And so tanky.
Oh yeah, very tanky. And then like you can also have some fun with a weird boy, and like you can play around with that kind of loadout and see if you can do some stuff. But I mean, you've got 1,300 points of boys and some leaders, and then you fill out the rest. Like I think Gaz is cool as shit, so I would put a Gaz in there. You need a Gretchen as far as I'm concerned, so we'll put one of those. Meganobs are always nice. Honestly, Storm Boys are going to be pretty cool just as like some other board control because like, it's good.
You just really love that kit. You've weaved it into everything.
I will play that even when it was terrible.
I'm shocked there's not a random 10 commandos in here.
I tried to keep my own biases minimized. It's still there, absolutely. But like, try to be a little bit more subtle about it. But I mean, like the core of the list is your boys and the leaders for them. Then figure out like, do you want Gaz? Do you want to add some mech stuff? Like whatever else you want to do, have fun, go for it as you desire kind of thing. Just know that like your boys are going to take over any melee that needs to be done. So like maybe work a bit more on maybe some shooting, maybe some mobility, character sniper, like, try and support the rest of the list to fix issues, or don't. I mean, just go all in on move forward, hit them with axe. That could work too. But I really am so happy that the Green Tide exists. It does its job pretty well. Like, it's got the 5-up invuln. You're getting rerolls on saving throws. At the same time, it doesn't feel like it's too oppressive for most lists, at least. There's going to be some lists that, like, this is just a stat check. Can you kill that many units? If not, well, too bad. But I think they did a pretty good job. We'll see as things shake up a little bit more. I know that there's been some success with Green Tide, but I don't think it's too oppressive. Maybe that's just because one of the other detachments is kind of taking the lead. But before we get to that one, we have the problem.
All right, so let's do Kult of Speed then. So out of these where we did our little example list, this is the only one that I did.
Yeah, I kept having troubles of like, I want to play the planes.
I put one plane in the example list because it has the speed freak keyword. A lot of people casually are going to want to have somewhere to put their orc plane. You can throw it in the Kult of Speed, and it's not the worst idea. So Kult of Speed is a very simple detachment. It wants you to play speed freak models, which is your bikes, your trikes, your jets, your bombers, your buggies, your war bikes. I already said wars. Your coptas.
It is hilarious how much the ridiculous orc namings are.
This is where if it's got a silly name, it's in here. Also just war bikes and the def coptas too.
Yeah.
But like shock jump dragsta, rucka truck squig buggy, mega track scrap jet, custom booster blasta, boomdaka snaz wagon.
It's all just good fun that like you made the silliest sounding words, but like at the same time you kind of understand what it's trying to do. Very speed freak, Kult of Speed.
It's also the shooting detachment. The only real hole is your infantry shooting doesn't really have a detachment that buffs it. You could argue putting mechs in them in Dread Mob is the trick.
That's a possibility, yeah.
But it's probably just a hole.
It's just not something that was really pushed, and orcs have never been like amazing at that anyways. It's just kind of fun.
Yeah, it is sad there's not a big Daka detachment.
Yeah, I mean, Adrenaline Junkies from Kult of Speed is basically like, hey, you can can go fast, but you can also still shoot. So always be shooting.
Yes. So you apply ABS as orcs. It's not anti-live brakes. It's always be shooting. But basically, you just want to be playing. Things that shoot a lot of bullets, whether they're good at it, doesn't matter, and things that go fast. It's not truly a self-building list. It kind of is. You get a lot of freedom because Speed Freaks honestly does have a lot of units within it.
Mm-hmm.
The nice part is the truck kind of gets glued to it. It's not a Speed Freak proper, but it's in some of the rules, including being able to do an enhancement where you put an infantry in a transport and you can still do charge after it moves.
Which there's some good fun that could be had with that.
But that means that you're able to do that sort of like, yeah, it's a very fast detachment that's all about vehicles, but I still have my key unit over here in a truck that I'm driving aboard and then taking out to go melee with.
Yeah.
And this detachment works very well switch hitting with the WA, which is an army ability you always have access to. It gives you your advance and charge, and when you go from being able to advance and shoot and then you pile on WA's advance and charge, now things like your all-rounders like war bikers and def coptas are terrifying.
You're going to be taking a bunch of things that have shooting, but there's basically no anything in orcs that doesn't smack in melee.
Yeah, Defcopters attack 6 times. They're not a melee unit. They just happen to attack 6 times because they're a funny orc vehicle. No one getting charged by the little biker mob is expecting that.
No. And like, it is interesting that you bring up the fact that, yeah, you're gonna be shooting, and that's great, but you still have the WA, and once you get stuck in, you can do some real damage.
Yeah, and you've got your war bikers, which are already okay at shooting, to be honest. Like, when you actually get the sheer amount of shots they get, even though they hit on 5s, when you get the bonuses the detachment gives you for like sustained hits, lethal hits, stuff like that, you can end up doing quite a bit through shooting. And then on the WA turn, you do advance, shoot, charge, delete.
Yeah, given that a lot of your things are like move 10, move 12, advance, charge.
Some of them auto advance 6.
Yeah, you're covering a lot of board.
In my example list, I've got a war trike who takes the Waz Blasta, which in another scenario might just be an okay 10-point enhancement. In the shooting phase, after you've shot, if you're not in engagement range, you can do a normal move of 6 inches. If so, not eligible to charge. Also known as move, shoot, move.
Which is always nice to have as an option.
But because it's a war trike, if it's attached to 6 war bikers, you are moving, auto advancing 6, still getting to fire because you're in this detachment. So now you've moved 18 inches, you shoot and move 6 more. That lets you jump across the board 24 inches in a single turn, every turn, while shooting.
Yeah. Honestly, it's pretty cool.
It's gotta be my favorite version of Evil Sons I've seen. I wasn't a big fan of last edition where it was like just +1 or something to advance and charge. It may have been +1 to advance, reroll the charge actually.
Maybe. I thought it just like buffed the movement by like 1 or 2, but it was not like fancy. It was fine.
I feel like the things that you're getting out of this detachment make you feel Evil Sons-y. If you want to paint your orcs red and go real fast, I think the edition is going to be very kind to you.
Yeah, and like, because there are 12 Speed Freak models, and a decent number of them are like kind of interchangeable with like, you know, they've got different flavor and like profiles and points and all that, but like they're kind of doing the same thing. There's actually a lot of customization that you can do in the list.
And visual interest you can get by playing different lists.
Yeah. The only issue I've had with it really is like, one, it's not the strongest. Like, let's just be honest. It's a shooting focused.
Yeah, it's a fun list, not a great list.
But like, I can get over that. That's fine. It does fun stuff. And then I try and put my airplanes in because I think orc airplanes are really, really cool. And then I get to remember how they are in 10th and go, I'll put them back on the shelf, thank you.
Yeah, I think Eric was overly sour on this detachment going in because of how much he wishes planes were better. I think if you ignore that single fact, which still, I put a plane in here is not the most embarrassing thing. For 135 points, what the Daka Jet is doing in here is not bad.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those, like, I've been sour on airplanes, but you did put together a pretty fun list that, like, I could definitely see doing well, and honestly, just being super fun to have them all zooming around, man.
I think we should talk about the actual hit of the Codex, the one that everyone has been talking about.
All right, we've got Bully Boyz. Oh my god, this detachment.
I hope you like Mega Knobs, because you're going to see a lot this edition until they get a point bump.
Yeah, Mega Knobs, I like Mega Knobs, so I'm super happy about it. But Bully Boyz is basically war bosses go make things bigger and grab all the Mega Knobs you can, because let's make them as scary as possible.
And again, it's abusing the war boss keyword to enhance units with the ability.
Honestly, I don't know why they allowed this to happen, but the ability to bosses watching lets you have 2 WAs. That's insane. I mean, yeah, the second one only works on, your war bosses, knobs, and mega knobs. Okay, sure, but
you're building your list around it.
Yeah, most of my list is gonna be like that. And also I get a second WA. That's insane. It's very, very strong. And it's also super fun, because one of the most exciting things to do in orcs is to call the WA and just go. And so just being able to do it twice is just that much more fun. And turn 2 and turn 3 are generally that's where you're figuring out how the game's gonna end up. Having both turns be able to use the WA, it's wild. But it's not even just that. You still get all of the nonsense that your war boss's leader working with, but you got solid enhancements. We get the teleport up, which lets you deep strike, just cause. It's interesting that the stratagems are so WA focused though.
And so knobs and mega knobs focused. The stratagems not working on war boss units.
Yeah.
Is interesting and a little weird to me. I would have liked to see a couple of them work on war boss units.
Yeah, I could have seen that, but I feel part of it was they wanted to focus on this being your knobs instead of because a war boss can lead other things. So I'm fine with it, but I like that a lot of the strats are do a thing that's fine, but if you're in a WA, do it better. It's just one of those it feels good to be okay, you still have access to stuff because we thought ahead and didn't want to limit it that much. But at the same time, this entire detachment is so focused around the WA, and the WA is so fun in general that it's fun to play, right? You're just doing so much orkness. And obviously, if a detachment is really good and still has the flavor and it's not just dumb, it's gonna be better when your models are really good as well. You're just gonna feel better when you're winning, so it doesn't hurt that mega knobs are insane.
They are. They're so nuts for 30 points.
Yeah, I think Auspex Tactics put together here's what your expected damage output from mega knobs is, and here's how much damage they can take. Even not in the WA, they're pretty insane. In the WA, they do ridiculous amounts of damage. Especially the kill saws. The single claw is fine because you get to shoot, but we're not here for that really. We're trying to use the WA as much as possible, which is hit them in combat. So just double up on the saws. Yeah, it is honestly wild, and they're very durable as well, especially in the WA. You're not gonna die to random bolter fire. It's just not gonna happen. So the lists, there are a bunch of options that you can do, but the ones that I like are focused on maximizing your mega knobs, grab some war bosses in mega armor, maybe a big mech, gets trucks, because
the one weakness of a mega knob solved by putting it in a truck.
Yeah, basically. And then then you get to fill out as you please kind of. I think you should have at least 1 and likely 2 grots, just because of how mega knobs are. Once they move up and get into combat, they ain't doing shit in the back line of your own. You're going forward, you're never going backwards. So you still need some grots to do the back line stuff. And then obviously I put my own little spice in there that I like the commandos in there, just because I like commandos, and I do think that they do a good job of shoring up some of Mega Knobs' weakness, along with Storm Boys. Storm Boys are probably the right choice, just because they're point costed better, but whatever. I'm not sure and totally sold on going heavy on the knobs themselves. The Mega Knobs are great.
No, knobs are not where it's at.
They're honestly not bad in 10th. It's just they're very much outshone kind of thing. Maybe one unit of knobs just cause.
You're trying to win an ugliest model contest.
That doesn't help. right? Like they would definitely be in that ugliest model and probably the winners, but that doesn't help. So like I think they're still neat, and this is where you're gonna play them if you're gonna play them. Let's be honest. The Bully Boyz is very strong. It has some really cool stuff going on. I do wonder if it's slightly too strong. Maybe it could be solved with just some point changes, like Mega Knobs gets hit a little bit, and then honestly Storm Boys probably should just be hit a little bit, just because like they're very cheap and they help a lot of the weaknesses that you're gonna run into with Bully Boyz. But I don't know, man. I think it's awesome, and being able to use the WA twice is very cool. So looking forward to more and more lists abusing that. But overall, the Ork Codex is like really good.
Even the detachments that you know are not the best have appeal to at least play once or twice. And that's the sign of a good codex, is when, yes, I know a certain detachment will not be the best, but I still want to play it a couple times. In this case, it is unfortunately the part of the faction I like most, but it's not that big of a deal because, again, you're just as fine in the Index, or honestly, because of how I was building my example list, it works in Bully Boyz if I don't care about getting the stratagems.
There are ways to maneuver some things around in those lists and make it work pretty well still. Yeah,
I can still run enhancements on my beast bosses. I can still, through beast bosses and beast bosses on Squigosaur and Moz, end up with the bosses watching working on everything.
Yeah,
it works everywhere, so it's not that big of a deal. And it's still, I still want to do, you know, hunting down my prey once or twice.
Yeah, it's very thematic. I like it, and it's not like weak. It just isn't quite up to the strength of the other ones. It's kind of the same thing of Kult of Speed.
I think Kult of Speed is more...
GW didn't want 9th.
I think it's good. I think Kult of Speed is just buffing a section of an army in an army where that section is not good, if that makes sense. You're buffing the shooty vehicles of orcs. Orcs are never going to be great shooty.
Well, and like they ran into a lot of those models being problematic before.
Yeah, so they probably played it slightly safe, not wanting the 18 squig buggy incidents to happen again.
Yeah, and like I think that's why like Daka Storm and Blitz of Fire have like a restriction of like you can't do them both on the same target, and it feels very much like that was a correct thing to do, but probably would have been overlooked if they weren't worried about it. From previous edition. Yeah, I just overall, man.
If we could summarize this, it would be, as an orc player, you can't really go wrong picking any detachment.
Basically, I mean, like, obviously, tune the list to the benefits of the detachment. But yeah, there's always something you can do. It's weird to complain about this, but like, I just want more detachments, right? Like, they did such a good job on these. Just give me like, 3 more.
It's something that we will see throughout the edition, I'm sure, is now that detachments are your codex, even people who get good codices like Orcs, CSM, you're still going to want more variety the longer the edition rolls on for. Which, it's not like it's hypocritical to be like, oh, you can't want more, you got a good codex. Like, you can still want more. It's okay.
Yeah, there's some other codexes that aren't particularly good, and it feels bad to complain and like want more, but like, they did such a good job, keep going kind of thing. So I mean, I could keep talking about other things with Ork Codex and more lists and stuff, but I think we've probably done enough damage to your voice, unless there's more things you want to ruin.
No, let's, real quick, we'll get out of here, but let's do the bit of foreshadowed, annoyed news. Let's talk about YouTube for a moment. This is a very sour point for the two of us and Berylio today. As we record this morning, a video that I spent 8 weeks putting together, this airbrush video that we just released last week, that you may or may not have already watched, is currently limited ads because YouTube believes that we said very naughty words during it. It's incredibly irritating.
It's fine. We made the video because we wanted to, but like, it's so irritating to spend that kind of time and effort. And like, the worst part to me is like, they don't even give us the review. They don't give us anything, man. It's just like, no, you said naughty words.
It goes beyond that, because then there's the button where we could push the button to get a manual review, and 30 seconds later, it was like, a human has checked this and confirmed it. And I'm like, how did a human check an hour-and-a-half video in 30 seconds after I pushed a button at 6 in the morning? So anyway, we're rather upset about that. And how it pertains to you, my dear listeners.
If you're actually interested in supporting us financially, we have something that's completely separate from YouTube.
All right, we don't normally shout out our Patreon other than its existence, but seeing as it's possibly a little more important right now, I'm going to give you a little bit of an extra sales pitch that I don't normally do. Our Patreon has a ton of features that you could be taking advantage of if you're a fan of the show. For $1, you get into a private patron hangout Discord. It's honestly just a fun place filled with good people. You have to be good people to stay in there though, so don't be a bad person. At $3, you get what I consider the best feature, which is our bonus contents. This is where all of our off-topic discussions during these recordings go to. I want to try for like a Don Beveridge impression. Take that home with you.
Don Beveridge.
From the one episode of Best of the Worst where they find it's the Whopper button guy.
Oh!
Tell the crew to push the Whopper button.
I had no idea like who you were, but yes.
He's a man of confidence, that Don Beveridge. If you don't have an army rule on turn 2, you don't have an army rule. It's an exceptional bonus, especially considering the size of the backlog if you were to go back through and try to mine it all out of there. In addition, you get to vote once a season, which, by the way, for our patrons out there, the vote ends, today, never mind. So that one's done for the season. You also, this is where you start seeing people's names at the end of the credits. Then we've got at $5, you've got things like your name shows up in the credits earlier. You can submit pictures of models and stuff to be in the end of the episode when you watch the credits roll. We randomly shout someone out on the audio podcast at the end every week. Sometimes you hear it in the video one, depending how the episode is edited. It could sound something like, also, we have great patrons like Stefan. Why did you choose a name like this?
It's random.
Sklyarov. Like Stefan Sklyarov, who keep us running. And then from there it goes to the ones that I don't expect people to do, but that's where you get to do stuff like hang out in our live episodes. You get your name really high in the show notes.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of like take a look at our Patreon page and, you know, it's all listed there. We try and make the rewards worth it, so.
But there's a lot for anyone who is interested in supporting us that way, and just given the state of how things went last week, it would mean a lot to us right now. It helps us knowing that we're less screwed by YouTube doing things like this.
Yeah, I mean, we don't trust or bank on any of the ad revenue being exactly what it is every month or whatever, but we generally expect something.
And as much as we joked about self-censoring during this episode, we're not going to change our podcast in any way because YouTube slapped us on the wrist. It's not a big deal. I really do think it was just a big misunderstanding with that episode, so I'm not overly concerned long term. It's a very sour day for us when we're recording this. So that's why we're going through all of this. And if you stick around on an orc episode and you don't own orcs for like 40 minutes plus, maybe an hour plus at this point, you're probably the target audience to look at our Patreon. So hopefully this back end stuff is interesting to you.
You're also the target audience for buying some orcs.
Maybe it is that, yeah.
All right.
Yes, enough depressing talk. Orcs are very fun. Great episode overall. Until next time, we're out of here. Have a good one.
Sounds good.